We'll give you some more information on where we're at in the tournament, what the players are playing for. But the big thing, this is a 20K team event, and the winners receive invites to both the Nerd Rage Championship and to the DreamHack Championship in Atlanta in November. So lots on the line here for these players, and we are underway.
Yeah, the culmination of just like returning back to the Pro Tour is huge incentive for players to, just get back into playing paper and to fight at the highest level here. And already off to a good start here for the Delver side of things. Force a will and a careful study.
Right. Yeah. So stopping these early enablers from Dredge is a good way to get a good start, because you can't really counters become less effective once the Dredge deck is starting to dredge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Bad. The days where I'd go turn 2 counterbalance, and then my opponent would be like, "Well, it's fine. Here's 3 Icarids. What are you going to do about it?" I mean, I see you smiling because I know you know exactly the same feeling. It's powerful stuff here, but this is what is this a breakthrough for X equals 0?
That's what it looks like. Yeah, this is a land drop made and then breakthrough for 0. So Caleb won't be keeping any cards, but the graveyard will get stacked. And so this will just be a pass to the turn. But he is going to present everything he's got there.
Yeah, and I think judging from the hand size and everything, that means we might also have threshold for the Cephalid Coliseum. So this is going to be somewhat of a very robust turn 3, which
Mhm.
is admittedly a little bit slow for combo decks. Nowadays in Legacy, I think we're used to seeing things like Black Red Reanimator, go as fast as turn 1, or
Mhm.
even sometimes 0 with protection. Doomsday has Dark Ritual to power out stuff. So turn 3 here, a little bit on the slower side, but given that Piper doesn't have anything in play, no threat, no pressure, no nothing like that, I'm feeling pretty good about Caleb's side.
Yeah, no, it's a fine start as long as the dredgers are there, which appears that they are. And Piper kicks things off with Steam Vents, which
Yeah,
if you're going to get a tap land, you may as well get. I mean, if you're going to fetch in the turn with nothing to cast, you may as well get that one out of the way.
fair enough. Yeah. One thing that's always interesting is how Dredge players sort of just put their graveyards out
Mhm.
because it is basically their board state, and I always get lost because there's so many cards in play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can see Caleb there. That line across the bottom of the screen there, that is not his hand. That's his graveyard, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger as we go here.
Okay, and I think the fireworks are going to begin here with an upkeep activation of Cephalid Coliseum.
Yes, indeed. Here it is. So let's see. So we're doing an upkeep. That's intended so that we can then, I guess, what is the advantage of doing this discard upkeep as opposed to draw step?
I think then you get better dredges in your draw step potentially. If you mill over like a Golgari Grave Troll or something like that,
Mhm.
you want to be able to use that instead of a Stinkweed Imp. And there you go. You can
Right.
see one already flopped over. So
Yeah.
good play here by Caleb. I'd say this is like in the fundamentals of just the Dredge Academy or whatever it is,
Yeah.
the 101s. So
Right. And
good
then
stuff.
here is, and there was just the one dredger. So fortunate that Grave Troll flips over and we do see Acrid come in. Another reason, I guess, to do it on upkeep is to find more fodder for Acrid to eat. So yeah, Caleb was a little precarious there with just the one dredger, but now sitting pretty, Narcomoeba comes in, and Piper is, yeah, maybe fairly unequipped to deal with this in game one.
I would agree with that sentiment too. I mean, in general, you have what Force of Will, which is good against maybe the spell based combo decks like Sneak and Show, Doomsday. But this deck, once it gets popping off, like we saw Force of Will in a turn 1. I believe it was a careful study, but then the second turn, the breakthrough just went through, and
Mhm.
after that, like you mentioned, there's just no spells to counter. So all these counter spells, Daze, Force, this and that, they don't really have any effect now at this point of the game. And you can also see like Caleb only has one land in play, but I don't think we're going to see another spell really get cast, maybe outside of like Cabal Therapy or Dread
Mhm.
Return if it's in the main deck.
Right. Nothing with mana is likely to be cast from now on. I believe there's one bridge. There's at least one bridge. Oh, we're gonna see a therapy here. Creating a zombie token. So yeah, there's the therapy that you were expecting, and I'm not exactly sure what Caleb would be naming even here at this point. Maybe Murktide, or because it's the biggest creature that can block his zombies.
Yeah, maybe there's like a sneaky read on expressive iteration. I mean, turn 1, no threat. Turn 2, no threat. Like, what else is
Mhm.
left in the hand, right? Honestly, anything but Force of Will, because I don't even know how relevant Force of Will really is. One
Mhm.
thing I will say, and this is just something that I've noticed over time, is that Dredge players just happen to be the best Cabal Therapy players just in the world, period. And you can see it right there. Hits on the lightning bolt. That is insane for game 1.
Yeah, no, that's super nice. Yeah, hits blind. And then, well, obviously with 2 iterations, if there's another therapy later on, it's likely to hit if he wants it to.
Yeah, I'm just imagining how over this game would have been also if you had named iteration. Both are justifiable. I think Lightning Bolt being able to stop taking out the Lightning Bolt so that it can no longer get rid of Icarids and Narcomoebas and whatever like the like is fairly good. I will say though that Caleb's board right now not as oppressive as I
Mhm.
would expect for Dredge. I mean, we did see a couple mediocre mills here as expressive iteration now on the stack.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this is not, you know, so impressive for turn 3. A lot of decks would be, you know, happy if this is all that Caleb had in play on turn 3. Another reason to name Lightning Bolt is it's probably one of the only ways Piper has to deal with the bridges by bolting a Ledger Shredder of her own.
Yeah, very good point there. Yeah. I think that's one of the few ways you can actually win game one from the Izzet Delver side, whether it is to just wasteland and deny your opponent of mana in like turn one or turn two, or get rid of multiple bridges, bridge from belows, at an opportune time somewhere in the mid game. I always
Mhm.
found that like, the turn two, like rest in peace line in post board games never felt stronger than the turn 5, 6, 7. And I think the same might even apply to, sneaky tactics like um the bolt on your own creature line, like you mentioned.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. So Piper sorting through this brainstorm, which is probably not the ideal iteration set of cards there. And Caleb will get another turn to just go nuts here. So let's see what he's able to do.
Look, I'm secretly rooting for Piper and Zoe and Jesse. They're all great players. We've seen them on the NRG series a lot of times. But something in me is also just I'm cackling seeing that Pyroblast being put back with the brainstorm. I mean,
Mhm.
suck it. I love to see Dredge as a choice. You're punishing the conventional deck building in the format right now. That being said, though, I think we are slowly getting to the point where maybe Caleb is going to pull just drastically ahead here. I would have really liked to see and I'm not sure if there is one in the hand or somewhere in coming up soon, but a plan towards Murktide Regent because yeah, and you can see here that the board
Yeah.
is just a bit too overwhelming, so we're gonna go
Yeah.
to game two.
Two Icarids was just going to add a lot of pressure to that board, generating
Right.
tokens when they died. And yeah, and that's just a match that like, Piper is just not equipped to fight that game one. All right,
Yeah.
so let's go ahead and switch over. We're not going to waste time looking at the sideboards. We're just going to go to where the action is. So we're switch over to modern here. Zoe Riederman versus Brandon Dolloway. Looks like a couple Dragon Race channelers for Brandon. Not much for Zoe, but then Living End tends to do a lot of work all at once.
Yeah, living in a little bit scary here. We see two Dragon's Rage channelers in play on the other side, and if I had to guess, they are Delirious. I do see an artifact land, sorcery, and instant in the counterspell here, so they are
Mhm.
swinging for 3 a turn each. Now, oh yeah, Zoe at 4 life. This is going to be pretty scary here, but maybe if there is a Cascade spell, we are able to clear the board, vomit a lot of creatures into play, and then just take over that way. I mean, once the living end is successful to resolve in game one, I find it difficult for the Grixis Death Shadow side of things to come back. So this is probably going to be the most critical turn. Kind of sweet that we got to just pan in at the right moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So the breeding pool coming in play tapped here. So Zoe's not going to go for anything at the end step. So it looks like it's going to be all in on Charlotte's Agent. And that makes it a little tougher because the Force of Negations aren't live during her own turn. But yeah, if a Living End resolves here, there aren't any creatures in Brandon's graveyard, and there are probably, even though we don't have good sight of it, quite a few in Zoe's. So let's see it, and it looks like it's not there. Okay,
Yeah.
well, moving things along, we'll switch over to Pioneer as Legacy isn't ready to start game 2 yet.
One
So
thing
we
I was
got
going to say about that board state is with the double Dragon's Rage channelers, it the other two lands left open were blue red duels, so there
Mhm,
was no chance of something like a drown in the lock or something.
that's true.
Kind of
Yeah,
kind of critical. So,
yeah.
oh god, this is a
All right.
mess.
Okay,
Joe,
so we got
you're the pioneer expert here, so you're gonna have to like catch me up and walk me through what the heck is going on here. I see a goblin token. That's cool.
yeah, we got yeah, well, Austin Collins's side is much easier to decipher as we've got the Fable the Mirror Breaker and Buddy token in play versus Jesse Robkin with Cavalier of Thorns, Oath of Nissa, several Well, I'm gonna have to consult the deck list here to see what an Elvish Mystic, but what are
Are you talking about the tokens?
oh, is Isika's Chariot is in the graveyard. Those are Isika's Chariot tokens. That's what's happening. Okay,
Okay,
so
cats.
Isika's Chariot came into play, and it looks like it probably attacked once to create one extra token. So that's what those are 3/2/2s in play there. So that's a reasonable board there for Jesse Robkin, even if it's not ideal to what Monterey Devotion is frequently trying to do. And Austin Collins here with Graveyard Trespasser, which is a card that I'm very impressed by.
Yeah, I think just even if you look at the rate there, 2 and a black for a 3/3. Flip side is 4/4. Ward
Mhm.
discarded card. That alone already is pretty sweet. But then the ability to
All right,
interact with
well,
the graveyard in a meaningful way and
Sky
something happening
Ship,
on the board.
Sky Sovereign comes in here, wipes out the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I may have lost Honorog, but Karn, the Great Creator, wishes for a Sky Sovereign, which is cast and takes down the Fable. And now this is a very powerful vehicle that the black-red deck is just not going to have an easy time dealing with. And yep, there it is. That is the end of the game. Okay, so things are happening quickly here. We get 3 games decided, and I guess let me know if Honorog returns.
Testing 1 2.
Oh, there you
Hello.
are. Okay.
I am here. Yeah, that was pretty exciting. I was I don't know if the audience could hear me or not. Just going on about uh Graveyard Trespasser and how it's a pretty sweet card, but no time to reminisce on Pioneer because we're going into game 2 for Legacy. And I mean, I'm just gonna straight up say it. I think this Dredge deck might be a pretty good choice here. It really does just depend on the sideboard here from the Delver side of things, and it looks like there are okay. I see 2 force negations, 2 counterbalance, 2 surgical extraction. That one's gonna be pretty good. Pyroblast meltdown, price of progress, pyroclasm. Okay, that's a sweet one. Maddening hex and submerge. There's really not too much here, like for dedicated graveyard hate, just the 2 surgical extractions. I think Pyroclasm could be pretty sweet for evening up the board, but otherwise, it doesn't feel great. And I think the fact that Caleb has made it here this far into the event, you don't get this far into an event without playing against a lot of Delver. So
Right.
I think if I had to put a bet, I'd say Caleb's going to take this game in 2.
Yeah, I think he does seem to be fairly well favored, and you're saying this Pyroclasm is good, and I agree with you. However, it's only going to be good when Caleb's deck is functioning. So it's a way for Piper to catch back up once she falls behind. So the surgicals really are the key card to prevent Caleb from getting out of control. And what you just said, there's only 2 copies, so that's asking a bit. Although there is a copy in hand.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, that's what you want to see this early on. And I think we got lands and spells as well. One thing that I was really interested when I mentioned the Pyroclasm, typically these sort of Delver strategies, they're going to be playing rough tumble so that it doesn't kill your flyers.
Mm-hmm.
But then I looked at the list. There's no Delver secrets.
Mm-hmm.
So Pyroclasm makes a lot more sense. You just need to make sure that your Dragon's Race channelers are delirious.
Right.
Maybe, and then it gets much better. Because I guess that means you could also technically bring it in the mirror and mise on some value there, which is to me kind of hilarious.
Yeah, sure, that could definitely work. Also, I mean, if Piper kills her own creature with a Pyroclasm, that's not the worst thing when there's Ridge from Below on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Caleb would get the tokens anyway from that turn, but still, it's something for the long game. So Caleb looking at 6 cards here. Dredge's deck is obviously going to function well on a lower hand size than many things.
Well, looking at the hand here, I feel like Piper's got a great opportunity to potentially just win the game. Oh, never mind. There's no Force Will. There's a Brazen Borrower, a Ponder, and a Surgical Extraction. The Wasteland is also going to be key here, as Caleb going down to 6 means that you're probably more primed to take advantage of the Wasteland on this lower resource opener.
Right. All right. So Dragon Rage Channeler comes into play first. If this cape did not have a surgical, maybe we'd see Piper lead on Ponder and just forego the Dragon Rage Channeler damage for the moment. But with surgical in hand already, yeah, being able to get a threat on the board and then defend, this is a great start. City of Brass for Caleb Scherer.
All right, I'm not gonna lie, Joe. Wiping the sweat off my brow because I had no idea that was a city of brass. I mean, from here you can kind of see that it's like a city and there's a little bit of brass, but this is one of the iconic Dredge lands that the rainbow lands, if you will, that Dredge is so full of. Future Imp also a little bit of a scary start, but it's good. It's good. This is where you want to be in the beginning of the game.
Yeah, I think I also want to make a note for the history of Nerd broadcasts that on this day at this time, I knew an alternate version of a card and the guest commentator did not. So let's just remember that
I've
for
been
the
saving
future.
this show, but today is actually my 30th birthday, no lie. So I'm joining you in the ranks of old and being a boomer. So I get the pass on this one.
Wow. All right. Well, happy birthday on Rakdos. Happy you're spending the morning with us here at Nerd Rage Gaming. That's awesome.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. So Lightning Bolt on Putrid Imp, which will, after the Surveil, we'll probably see Caleb discard some Dredgers. For his sake, hopefully there's more than one, as Piper is ready for the first one.
You see, this is really interesting too, because I think there's been a debate when playing the matchup about what you want to use your surgical extraction on, whether it is one of the dredgers or maybe something more permanent, like an Icarid or a Narcomoeba or even a Bridge from Below, right?
Right.
And I generally find that Dredge will find a way to power through a single surgical extraction on an enabler. So I like to save mine, but then again, I have also mostly just played it from the lens of the control deck. So it's going to be tricky here, but with such an aggressive start, Wasteland, Bolt, and having the surgical extraction, I wouldn't be surprised to see, Piper take a more aggressive line here with the Dredge. Looks like we're just saving instead and playing for a longer game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also predicated on what, like, if Caleb had just discarded one Dredger there, I feel like it's hard for Piper not to fire off the surgical. But when he discards two, then certainly the option presents itself. Do you wait and go for Icarid or one of the other cards you mentioned?
Yeah, and it gets a little bit trickier too, because one thing I was going to say was we saw Caleb excellently navigate the Cabal therapy in game one. Now in game two, you're using all of these moments, all of these draw steps to collect more information, to understand the texture of the game, and more specifically Piper's post board hand. So I don't even know, at some point maybe you're just forced to not name surgical extraction at some point with a Cabal therapy if you do get there, because like you mentioned, this was a really good opportunity for Piper to potentially play it. Um, if not, then we're gonna have to figure out what else is in the hand. How are we gonna navigate this game? Are we gonna, just get the rest of our dredgers in? But the way it is right now, I would say advantage bar, as delicious as it is leaning on the Delver side of things.
I would agree there also. Caleb's definitely going to be hoping for a spread of threats on this next dredge, which is going to be pretty massive with the Coliseum, another Coliseum in hand. He will be able to have Threshold, obviously, and kick this off pretty big. Looks like there's the Stinkweed Imp and Golgari Thug in the graveyard at the moment. Piper's game plan is basically going to proceed like normal for the first two turns, setting up Delirium for Dragon Race Chandler, trying to get the clock going. But really, the damage race is unlikely to play a big role, I would think. It's going to be, can Piper keep Caleb off the board?
Right. And according to my math, and just double check me on this, things are getting harder nowadays. 1, 2, 3 land instant creature. Dragon's Race Channeler is quite sane, is not delirious. It's just a 1/1.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is I think there was a Ponder in Piper's opening hand. Maybe we'll see that here.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that would get us there. Yeah.
Yeah, because it is, I feel like, pretty essential, even though we're just talking about it, the goal for Piper is to keep Caleb off the board. Still, you want to reduce the amount of turns he has as much as you can, and his lands do damage to him as well, at least a little bit. So,
Ooh, that's interesting. Unholy Heat.
another way to kill off the bridges or pick off a random creature, but just the random creatures in Caleb's deck just don't matter that much. So, yeah, Piper giving a shuffle, and I mean, there's one surgical left in the deck. See if she can find it. That would obviously be the best possible draw there.
I was going to say potentially that, keeping the Unholy Heat to maybe kill the Dragon's Race Channeler is good, but on this situation, I mean, you also do need pressure, so there's a delicate balance here, and I think it's just a no-go. You need to get that life total a little bit lower. Someone once told me the best form of card advantage is to just kill your opponent, because then you get all the cards. I mean, yeah. I vehemently disagreed with that, but that is one route to winning this. I mean, just the classic Delver, make your opponent stumble. You have a fast clock. We saw the Murktide region come into the grip there as what is this, a Hogak going into the bin here for Caleb?
Ooh, well, that's an exciting one. See if you can get enough fodder onto the board to be able to actually cast that, as here comes Coliseum activation. That'll cost Caleb a life point there, and then this will give him 3 draws. The heavy dredgers are in the hand right now, but this will help regardless of what happens. And Piper, so I wonder, so Piper kept 7. If you're in Caleb's seat, do you, in a sideboard game, what's the likelihood that your opponent kept a surgical when on a 7-card hand? I think it's pretty high.
Well, here's the thing, right? If you look at all the cards so far that Piper has played, not one of them is really threatening. Like we see a bunch of lands, bolts, Dragon's Race Channeler, and cantrips. If you know, we're in the top 4 of a 20K. If my opponent keeps a hand with 7 and shows me all these cards, I have to assume there's something else there. So I would be very cautious, or as cautious as I could be, and assume that there's a surgical extraction or something of the like, because there is no way you could justify to me, keeping this kind of non-interactive. And I speak from experience when I say this. If you keep a hand that doesn't have interaction against Dredge, you will get absolutely rolled over. And
Right.
so, Caleb very well knowing this, Piper very well knowing this, like there's an inkling of a doubt, and I think that's what we're about to see, whether it plays out in a good way or not. So
All right, so we did finally find a creature, an Archimedes, to come into play. There are also several Icarids in the graveyard now, and a bridge from below. So Piper's got some options with his surgical, but it's going to be almost regardless what the target ends up being. It's going to come out this turn, I would imagine.
okay, I still don't see surgical extraction on the stack here with the
No.
Narcomoeba trigger floating. So I wonder if the Narcomoeba is going to be able to enter play. Now, this is kind of interesting because if we get to surgical bridges, okay, it looks like we're still resolving the Cephalid Coliseum trigger.
Yeah, so 3 cards getting pitched from so it's draw 3, discard 3. And now, I mean, you talked about the potential of Cabal Therapy and whether you would name surgical extraction, which seemed kind of silly, but we are very near the point where that actually could happen.
Right, so this is starting to get to the point where, like, especially in paper, with all of this action that we just saw here, right? It was like, wait, pause, let me finish doing this. Something's going on. There's a chance that I think at this point, Caleb might very well know that there's a surgical extraction going on, or sneaking around in Piper's hand. Which now brings us to the next level: is that are we just forced to use the surgical extraction on the Narcomoeba? Because if we don't, you can bet that Caleb's going to flashback the Cabal Therapy. That's the first card that Caleb's going to name. So we're slowly getting to the point where the window of opportunity for surgical extraction to be like this, like in the dark blowout, is dialing down. And here's the thing, right? Surgical extraction is really good against Dredge, but there's so few cards that are actually good against Dredge that you bet Caleb is going to have it on his radar, and you bet that that's one of the few things that he's going to try to play around.
Right, absolutely. And this is open deck list now. In the top 4 deck lists, players are able to review their lists before sitting down to play, so he knows what Piper has access to. It's not a guessing game on what kind of hate there might be. And yeah, so this is so let's just go through the options here while Piper's giving this some thought. If Piper surgicals the Narcomoeba from the graveyard right now, this will be the end of Caleb's turn. Then next turn, the Icarids will all jump back into play with Cabal Therapy able to be cast and Hogak potentially. If the other options are to name the Therapy, so the Narcomoeba can't be sacrificed here, the Bridge, the Icarids, I mean, there's a lot of choices, and there's only one surgical. So here is the Therapy on the stack. So that Narcomoeba did come in. This is tough. I don't know what the right decision is.
I really don't either. And I will say that the Hogak definitely does complicate things as well, because so I think at this point, okay, naming, you probably go after. Okay, I take it back. This is complicated, Jim.
Yeah. So it looked like Piper was selecting Icarid, but it's actually Piper just identifying what all's in the graveyard. And Caleb saying, like, yeah, you got a surgical.
Okay.
What do you want to do?
I think my answer is I'd go for the Bridge from Belows.
Mhm.
Because we have the Murktide Regent in hand, we can
Yeah.
somewhat temper the aggression from Icarid. We could just, I mean, it's kind of silly to say that we're going to just race a bunch of free 3/1s with haste coming into play every turn, but we are going to race a bunch of free 3/1s coming into play every turn. So, that is what it is. And extraction is resolving. It looks like we're going for the
Icarids.
Icarids. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So Icarids are out of here. One zombie token will come into play. And then you talked about these Dredge Cabal Therapy snipers. So Caleb still got this Cabal Therapy on the stack. So we know there is the Murktide, which potentially could come down as a pretty sizable blocker and attacker. But Caleb's got one shot here to blindly take a card out of Hyper's hand. We'll see if that's able to be hit or not.
Yeah. I mean, I think at this stage of the game, understanding what's important and what's not. Oh, that's crazy. I mean, we named Lightning Bolt earlier. I think that one was pretty straightforward. Naming Force of Will or something like that, I'm not a fan of. Maybe, I mean, the process of elimination, right? You can name
Mm-hmm.
Expressive Iteration, but is that what the game's about at this point? And then there's also Murktide Regent. So it's not really conventional to name like a creature, but Murktide Regent is quite warping, and I wouldn't mind it,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think this is going to be make or break here. This Cabal Therapy for the rest of this game. Oh wow!
Caleb is on top of it.
He just doesn't miss.
Yeah.
I told you, Dredge players are in. I mean, okay, well, here, this is both a dig and both like a compliment, but like when your only interaction is just Cabal Therapy, you better be good at it, otherwise you're not gonna win. No surprise. I mean, this is probably a holdover from like the Gitaxian probe days. I mean, Caleb not really shy to Cabal Therapy, but we're seeing this. This is good magic right here.
Absolutely. All right. So there was a second therapy. So iteration gets knocked out as well. And so Caleb with no board now, really hoping to hit some more Narcomoebas on the next draw step. But Piper's got this 3/3, and that's really it.
Have you read Menendian's book on Gush?
No.
Yeah, me neither. But someone could write a book about Cabal Therapy. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here is Dredging Grave Troll. Another bridge, but no creature. So this is there's two primary free creatures historically in these dredge decks. And Piper has removed one set of them, but the Icarids are gone. So Caleb is kind of hamstrung until another Narcomoeba comes out.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because there's also a ticking time bomb on the other side, which is simply just making land drops. If you can hit that Mystic Sanctuary to put Surgical Extraction on top of the deck, then target, what is it, the Narcomoeba in the graveyard right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Caleb has another way to put creatures into play. Okay, that's not entirely true. Caleb could literally just start drawing lands and casting dredgers. But if you're at that stage of the game with your unfair combo deck,
Mm-hmm.
certainly something else has gone wrong, which it has in that hypothetical situation. So like it's yeah, we're almost there. I think this might be the second to last turn, if not the last turn, where you have to hit a Narcomoeba in order to make it through.
There's
Oh, and
one.
there it is. Okay.
And that is going to enable quite a bit here. Oh, I don't know if there's another therapy or not. So if this Narcomoeba can't actually be sacrificed, it's still not going to do much. But there are
True.
multiple bridges. There is a Hogak in the graveyard. So if this Narcomoeba is able to die, then Caleb will be able to load up the board with a couple zombies as well as a Hogak.
This is like really dirty, but petty theft on the Narcomoeba is actually kind of filthy here. Caleb being at 8 means that okay, no, there's a
You're
therapy.
right.
Never mind.
That
No,
that would
no
be
games.
but that would have been possible before we
Yeah.
got to Caleb's main phase. That would have been pretty sick. This is okay. This is to bounce one of the tokens on the way in.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, that
And that's
works also
smart.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. With Hogak in the graveyard. Hogak is a 8/8, right? Yeah, it's
Mhm.
definitely an 8/8. I've taken 8 from that card way too many times. Yeah, with Hogak in the graveyard, preemptively, bouncing one of the tokens, so you cannot convoke/delve the Arisen Necropolis into play. Oh god, I love it when cards are on the screen and I can just cheat and not have to actually like think about things. We might actually be going into a game 3 here.
Yeah.
I'm pretty impressed here. I said Caleb was going to take it in 2, but there's a chance.
No, there's more than a chance. Sinquid Imp is dredged. There are still a couple more Narcomoebas. Unclear how many cards are left in Caleb's deck. It's not a huge number. That did not provide much help, and that's gonna do it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Modern it is. We're going to game 3 in Modern. Jesse Robkin has defeated Austin Collins in Pioneer. So only one more game win will put the team of Robkin, Riederman, and Powell into the finals. Turn 1 Ragavan, though, for Brandon Dolloway is a good way to start off game 3 of their match.
Indeed, it is. A little bit of work here left for the Collins Dolloway Scherer team in order to take the dub here, but they're playing against arguably the most powerful mages, in this top 4 here. I wouldn't be surprised that this is how it is right now. Living End versus Grixis Death Shadow. I tend to favor Death Shadow decks in these situations. Generally speaking, the deck that has a lot of cheap interaction, thought
Mhm.
seizes, and 2 mana counter spells, and even post board, you're bringing in all your relevant interaction. And speaking of relevant interaction, we should also just check out what that actually means for the Grixis side of things here. So as I pull that up,
All right,
I would say this is a good start here for Brandon.
it definitely is. This is not a matchup where Ragavan is going to often find a card to play, but the treasures are still valuable. And here we see Dragon Rage Channeler and a Thoughtseize. So the interaction you were talking about, surveilling an extra way Ragavan away, that's nice. And okay, the way the first card came out of hand, I thought maybe it was going to be a pitch for a Force Negation, but instead it's just the resolution of Thoughtseize, revealing Curator of Mysteries, Brazen Borrower, Endurance, Street Wraith, a Forest, and a Scalding Tarn.
Interesting here. While they figure out what the Thoughtseize target is, and I can see Joe sort of just like leaning into the camera, just like trying to read the cards and figure out, oh, what would I take here? You can't see this stuff on the screen here, but it's just, if I can take a dig at Joe, I definitely will. One thing I do want to mention is that I did say earlier that the Grixis deck is probably favored in
Mm-hmm.
post board games, but keep in mind Zoe also won the first post board game, so I might just be like eating my own shorts here. I don't know.
All right, so you're looking at the list. What did you find there? What does Brendan Dolloway have here for?
A decent chunk of stuff actually. So 2
Okay.
copies of Unlicensers, 2 Spell Pierces, 1 Chalice of the Void, 1 Flusterstorm. Those are cards I definitely do like. To round out the sideboard, there's a couple Terminates, 3 Mystical Disputes, Snapcaster Mage, and K Command. I'm not. Oh, and then 2 copies of Dress Down. And the last few cards I'm not a huge fan of. Maybe Terminate could help in certain racing situations and things like that. But otherwise, I think we have a solid, at least 5 cards, 6 cards that we're
Mm-hmm.
bringing in here. And they all spell the same story here, which is low to the ground interaction and then cheap threats. And I'm just going to take a lot more game actions than you are and develop this board that you can't come back from, as is
Right.
typical with tempo strategies.
Yeah. Okay. So Ragavan connects again. 2 treasures now. Maybe something. Architects of Will. Okay. Brandon could cast that.
It does have an ETB ability that is
Yeah.
very relevant.
All right. Chooses against. Gonna hold up the mana. It's nice that John the Lock is basically guaranteed to connect on anything in this deck, because the graveyard's always full for Living End. And even if it's not, it doesn't take any cards in the graveyard to be able to counter the Living End itself. Which
And this
I
is pretty
guess,
good
yeah.
discipline here from Brandon's side. I think I saw a copy of Counterspell in the hand here, and choosing not to take the free value off of to Ragavan is I mean in this situation I think and at this stage and at this like tier of gameplay is probably straightforward for these players. But I do want to commend that we're not topping out of our mana. We're understanding that putting a 3/3 into play is not what the game is about right now. The game is about making sure that I just don't get completely blown out by powerful interaction like
Mm-hmm.
Living End and the sweeper and all these sort of things. I'm actually, oh my goodness, is that a second copy of Counterspell? Is that two? It's hard to see from
I'm not
here.
sure, but it's at
Yeah,
least one. Yeah.
because if it is, I would just say that we're gonna go back to Legacy and see how that Delver versus Dredge match is playing out, because this is a really scary hand here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not so much the board, but we'll eventually get there where the Dragon's Rage Channeler will become delirious and whatnot.
Yeah. We are also in a board state where if Zoe just hard casts a Curator of Mysteries, that's actually the best creature on the board if it makes it into play.
Please don't
So
say that. Oh no.
we'll see. We'll see where we get to here. Zoe does have a land drop, no red mana. And
Yes,
no Shardless
our
Agent.
game with $100 mythics is just going to devolve into I have a 3/4. Is my draft playable going to beat you? Yes, it will. Okay.
It happens. We certainly saw a little bit of it yesterday. All right, so a third land for Brandon here, and yeah, you're right. If he's just 2 counterspells in hand, that's already a lot with the pressure on the board for Zoe to deal with.
Agree. This is a weird dynamic too, because I'm not. I don't remember what exactly the thoughts he's took earlier on. But if it wasn't the endurance that we saw in the hand, then we have a problem here from Brandon's side because you're right.
Mhm.
Now suddenly these big booty blockers are going to be a problem. Sorry, I'm still taking a take here. It's my birthday. I get away with a couple things here, Joe.
Of
But
course.
yeah, it's a problem because like now you have to expend your counter spells on cards that you don't really want to,
Mhm.
and honestly, countering a 3/4 is good for Piper. Sorry for Zoe because you just bring it back into play with
Right.
your cascade spells.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very unproductive counter, but on the other hand, then is Brandon just gonna pass on the turn here? I mean, that's not great either.
Right.
All right. Variation number 2 onto the board, and it is Watery Grave and perhaps two counterspells, but just 2 cards. So okay, here's an attack. So this means that yeah, counterspell is going to fire off here.
Okay. Oh wait, that's a good flip.
Yep, that's a nice one. So that ensures Delirium as the counterspell is the instant being added to the graveyard.
Wow. Okay, now that is a confusing flip.
Yeah. So Brendan obviously thinking if I draw this Hearst next turn, is it going to matter? And clearly thinking no, that's the game might be decided by then.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, right? Because now we are trying to focus on making sure that the living end just never resolves
Mhm.
rather than having a way to stop a resolved living end. So unlicensed hearse is, a very good piece of graveyard interaction, especially in this format, which is something that was surprising to me. But it being good in so like things like the mirror match, it being good in this matchup, probably, has some value in the 4-color matchup too. Probably wouldn't bring it in, but it still has some value.
Mhm.
Um, is interesting to see. But yeah, I think we're all in on just using our 8 points of power in play to win on the next turn. And again, this is just what the deck is trying to do. Like de facto, look, I have 3 1-mana threats in play, and you have cycled a couple times. Who's ahead here on this board state, right? Like,
Mhm. Yeah. So there is lethal damage being presented now. Here is the watery grave that Rose in Brandon's hand gets dropped. So I believe he's just sitting on one additional card.
okay, this is it. This is the turn. And it's
Yeah.
very possible to get out ahead here. Something like a grief, take your last card, and then cascade. And Zoe
And
Riederman can just steal this game 3, but as it looks right now, 8 points of power in play. The Dragon's Rage Channelers are delirious. Wait, 3 plus 3 plus 2. Okay, yeah, they are delirious. This is gonna be make or break here.
if the last card is a counterspell, then and Zoe goes for Hardcast Courier of Mysteries here, then that would do it. As there's no way to defend a spell on her own turn. And it seems
As-
unlikely she has Force Negation anyway, otherwise we would have seen it on Brandon's counterspell last turn.
Right. A an evoked endurance, not too bad here either. It would buy you a draw step or two, but
Yeah.
that might not even be good enough because I mean, okay, endurance resolves, sure. And then I have it a graveyard, but you're still going to take 4 points of damage and you're in the same situation the next turn. So
Mhm.
maybe that's not even good enough here. And I guess Zoe doesn't even have red mana here too, which is another complication, but that might be by intent.
Ooh, Cycle Curator here. All right. So maybe there's no additional land, or maybe the decision was that Courier wasn't going to cut it.
I thought I saw a Shardless Agent in the grip, but that might not be correct.
Well, Charlotte's Agent is actually not terrible either, as Brandon would have to counter the living end, And so that would keep Zoe alive,
Oh yeah, true.
as they can just trade with the Ragavan. So here's the Cascade.
Wait, this might just be enough to come back. I totally forgot that Charlie's Agent is a literal body that can impact the board here. So
Double surveil here. Brandon looking for anything. He only needs 1 additional damage. Okay, no help found.
These Dragon's Race channelers are crazy good.
And Zoe does have Endurance in hand. You're right about that. So even if there is a removal spell here for Brandon, if Zoe has a green card, she can reduce the damage intake down to just 4.
And then potentially swing back with another Shardless Agent. No red mana means that the number of outs here is deceptively low.
Yeah. And this attack would an attack for 6 here would shut off fetch lands and shock lands for Zoe, making red mana much harder to acquire.
One thing that I'm notoriously bad at is like judging hand size. I think Zoe only has 3 cards in hand, so if she does evoke an Endurance or something like that,
that wouldn't leave her with much. Yeah. All right. So take 6 down to 1.
All right, draw step, clutch. Is that a living end in hand? It looks like an old bordered black card.
I didn't see it myself, but that's the card that would make sense. I believe there's an Endurance in hand, but 1 Endurance is not enough.
Right.
I take that back. 1 Endurance is enough if only the Dragon Rage Channelers attack. Because then the Shardless Agent can block 1.
That is gut-wrenchingly evil. Oh my god, that's so dirty. I mean, yeah. Well, wow. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, would you attack with the Ragavan then?
I mean, if you knew the hand, you absolutely would, but
That was a dumb question.
Yeah, but you don't know that, and if you're just attacking for, I suppose you would. There's no reason not to, because Endurance is the only thing that's gonna mess you up in that way. So as long as Brandon thinks of it, then yeah, I think you would attack with a Ragavan. It's unfortunate because the muscle memory is to not attack with it since you didn't last turn, but
right.
We'll see.
Price memory does put Endurance on the radar though, because you just saw it like a couple turns ago. So
yeah.
I wouldn't be too surprised to see it, being played around again. But it looks like instead we're gonna maybe cycle a creature. That's information. Okay, 1 card we now know about from Brandon's side. I don't know. I read heavily into these kind of things.
Right.
And it's a good cycler too. It's Waker of Waves, right? That
Could
gives you a
Waker
little
of
bit of
Waves.
selection too, right?
Could be Sky Turtle. There is a Misty Rainforest in hand. There is the Waker of Waves. All right.
All right. Better hope one of the 2 is good.
Well, at this point, we need a land for Zoe. That's not going to do it.
Uh-oh.
There's no Urborg or Yavimaya in play. I think Brandon has got this one.
There we go.
Yep, and
nice.
that's
All
it.
Right.
So Brandon Dolloway will even up the match, and we'll go over to Legacy, where Piper Powell and Caleb Scherer will battle it out to determine who advances to the finals. And
I think I might be able to tell you looking at this board state.
there's, I don't know. Okay, what's your initial? What do you think? Who's winning?
I see a dragon in play, which means that we got to the point where the dragon would be playable, which means we didn't get run over, which means we're potentially stabilizing, which means that we've won. We've basically won. So
all right. If Life Total is just updated, Caleb at 10, there is 10 damage, 10 aerial damage in the board as long as Piper has Delirium. If it is her turn.
And looking at Piper's hand too, I think there was a copy of Pyroblast, which is great because you could Pyroblast your Murktide Regent and then get rid of Bridge from below, and then your Dragon's Race Channelers become Delirious, and then you're swinging in for a 2-turn clock anyways. And look, I told you, basically won. It's wrapped up.
Right. So your plan is between swinging for lethal now and killing your own creature to have lethal next turn. You're going to go for that plan?
Look,
On Rakdos, ladies and gentlemen, on his birthday.
Wait a
With
minute.
the key tech. Yep.
No. I got you. See, look, Dragon's Race channelers are not delirious yet, but with the Pyroblast on the Murktide, then they will. I think, because I see Wasteland, Unholy Heat, Force of Will, and Brainstorm. So that's 3 card types. So,
yeah. Well, how about Pyroblast on the zombie token to try and get Delirium?
I mean, you're putting back 2 cards. It looks like we're resolving a Brainstorm right now, anyways.
Yeah.
So I guess.
Well, Pyroblast looks like it's going back.
Okay. All right. Yeah, see, it's interesting here. Surgical Extraction. Okay, we have one of those, and that's good. And that's probably the card that really will seal the deal here, more so than anything else. But I think this Daze doesn't seem very convincing to me. I understand that you get to counter any spell that you want, but what spells are even going to be cast here that matter? It's like what, Cabal Therapy?
Perhaps. Anyway, 4 damage comes across. And yeah, so Piper at 18, but here we go for Caleb. Icarid on the way in. Narcomoeba's able to be jumping into play to have, so there are potential flying blockers. There's one right there.
Another reason to potentially keep the Pyroblast too is
aha.
Oh, we're just doing it. Okay.
Okay, Surgical Extraction. Probably on the Narcomoeba. Surveil triggers, targets made. There goes the Pyroblast and the Daze. All right, so is this going to do it? There's also a Daze. Are we dazing our own Surgical and paying for it?
That's okay. Interesting.
Well, there's a sorcery.
All right. They fly menacingly. Actually, no, deliriously.
All right, so we did see Surgical on Narcomoeba, Daze, pay for it, Surveil 4 times, and now resolve the Surgical on the Narcomoeba. And can Caleb Scherer find a defense here?
It's going to be very tricky, very difficult, because I mean, Narcomoebas are the only blockers that fly on this board state. You could get Stinkweed Imp, but
can we Dredge return a Stinkweed Imp?
That would be oh gosh.
I guess that wouldn't do it either. If Delirium has been achieved, then those Dragon Range channelers are also enough. So 1 blocker is not enough.
You kind of just need like the, I don't know, like one of those narrators' voices. The year is 2030. Murktide has gone rampant, and our only answer is Stinkweed Imp. And then just like cue, like, I don't know, like a Michael Bay trailer or something like that. I don't know. Oof. This is not looking good here for Dredge.
No, it is not. As much as game 1 looked heavily in Dredge's favor, and which is something that happens. You know, decks like Dredge pick up game 1 and they have to struggle to win 1 of the 2 sideboard games. And it may be too tough of a task here for Caleb's Dredge deck. A couple of more zombie tokens come into play. But what is the plan here? What do we see? How are we going to find blockers?
Yeah, funny story. I mean, looking at the deck here, wait, there's no Dread Return at all. Oh no, it's in the sideboard.
It's in the sideboard, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the sideboard with an Ashen Rider. But I don't think you'd board in Dread Return in this matchup. Would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, Dread Return for Ashen Rider would be pretty good right now. That would keep Caleb alive.
Yeah, I guess so.
Here is an attack. Oh, so there's still no Delirium.
Oh.
Well, all right then. So Caleb gets another draw step, which actually means another Dredge. If there's no Delirium there, I suppose one of the non-summoning 6 zombie could have attacked there. Not that that really matters. I believe Zoe's actually at 16. I'm sorry, Piper's at 16 because that Surgical Extraction life wasn't subtracted.
Okay, well the math, every point here is definitely going to matter. That's a Hogak. That doesn't do anything though, I guess.
No, that didn't look like much helpful. And there it is. The hand is extended. And Robkin, Riederman, and Powell will advance to the finals. Boy, that was that got a little tense, but yeah, I mean, the Dredge deck just doesn't have a lot of ways to muster aerial defense. I mean, there's not much reason to have it. You're supposed to be the deck that's putting the opponent on the back foot. That's just not what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my analysis at the beginning was a little bit short sighted because I was saying earlier that just by virtue of nobody having hate for your deck, like proper answers in multiple or third or fourth copies of Graveyard Hate, this is your time to shine. But it might just be the case that like here's my 2/2 flying Regent Dragon that kills you in 2 turns. That in and of itself is a combo deck that just outperforms the entire Dredge deck. I don't know. I mean, bits and pieces of interaction plus a very, 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 very fast clock has been the name of the game here, and it could just very well be the case that haha Murktide Regent is a big part in why this matchup played out the way it did.
And we did see. I mean, there are two. You're saying not having the third and fourth copies of Graveyard Hate. Well, that's just to make sure that you draw one. Well, Piper did find one both games that both sideboard games with. I mean, cantrips and such. I mean, these decks do flow through the decks pretty well. And when the surgicals, when the hate card's free, you don't have to hold up a lot of mana for it. So yeah, and it's just, I don't know. Without that surgical, that Narcomoeba comes into play. Maybe that game ends up different.
Yep,
but
tough to say.
The surgicals are very effective, and they are enough to advance to the finals. All right, we're going to take a break and come back with the finals. This is NRG Gaming 20K Team Showdown. Stick around.